Is here. Hello there, Lisa.
How are you, Joe?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm better now. Oh, computers, Google accounts, you name it.
Yes, I can name it.
Lots of
If you could
fun.
show me my red beret, that would be good too.
I got it.
Okay, I received the document you sent me. I have
Super.
not had a chance to read it yet because
Oh, that's okay.
I didn't realize you were sending it by email, and I only recently happened to look at my email.
That's okay. I was waiting for you to send me a link through my email, so I'm just as guilty.
Oh, you mean to send me to send you the link to the broadcast through your email?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
But that was just me.
For something like links, of course, it's easier to do the DM since
Yeah,
we're
it
in
is.
such frequent communication through DM. Hello, everybody. We are here,
Hi,
and
everybody.
we're going to go over to Facebook now and share for a few minutes, and then we will start up, okay, in earnest. So, to Facebook. Did you know my handle on Facebook is Let's Get It Done, Joe?
No, I did not know that. I
Well,
haven't been on I haven't been on Facebook, Joe, for so long. I'm not even sure that I even can remember what the login is. I have no, I don't know. I'm just so used to being in a contained server from working so long in corporate America that I'm still so security conscious and Google averse and Facebook and all of that. Terrible.
Okay, I can understand that.
I wish I could. Everybody else seems to be cool with this. I'm not.
I'm not entirely cool with it, but people are there, so I stream to Facebook and I stream to YouTube. And if I had more technical smarts, I'd stream to 3 or 4 other places too. I really need a technical producer.
You and me both.
Anyway, at first glance, things look good in the document that you sent me. I'm sure I'll have a few comments, though, or suggested changes.
I would hope so. I kind of put it together from a more narrative perspective. I didn't want to get too mired in the weeds. I almost wanted to make reference to, see below for statistical details, because sometimes I think that I was coming at putting that rebuttal together from the standpoint of being able to read it, understand it, easily ingest it without having to stumble over too many stats. And then I thought that we could add the stats underneath the rebuttal if, when it's appropriate. I did put some statistics in there, but I didn't get into the striation of the funding and all of that too heavy.
Okay by me. it is okay by me. Okay, I think I'm just about done with my sharing. So I will turn off the echo page and move over here and remove our promo for us. So now your camera needs a slight adjustment, or you need to sit back a little, either way.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that looks good. Okay, so here we are, folks. My guest for tonight is Lisa Theobald, I should say, the famous 50 lines only of the Red Berets. And we are here tonight to have more conversation about the fight on all fronts strategy, to try to lay it out a little more concretely and explicitly than we have done in the past. Let me say hello to people while we're here. Hey, Dolores, how are you? And you're here both on Facebook and YouTube as usual. And Steve Day is here. Hi, Steve. And Jeff Denton is here. Hi, Jeff. It's very nice to see you. Kay says, hi, all. Glad to see you. Sandy says, hello. Kay shared. Sherry Wise is here. Hi, Sherry. Haven't seen you for a while.
Sherry.
Very nice. Very nice to see you back. And Lana, hi. It's very good to see you here as well. And so that, okay, is really good. And Russell Gorman. Hello, Russell. Thank you for hanging out a little, too. Steve Gonzo or Ghost Start says Lisa. So that's great.
Hi, Steve. I have some of Steve's artwork, I believe.
Really, I haven't seen any of Steve's artwork, or have I?
I think, I'm pretty sure. Anyhow, keep going.
Okay. Have you seen some memes, maybe?
If I have the right Gonzo, he is a very talented artist. I may not, but I'm pretty sure I have the right person.
Good. And Shane is here too from KRTD Media. He says, hey, Lisa. Hey, Joe. Hey, Lana. And Amber says, good evening, my lovelies. I'm working a late shift tonight, so I'll watch this later, but I shared. Thank you very much, Amber. You are always a warrior for us. Okay, so we've talked about fighting, okay, on all fronts, but quite a lot. We've talked about the general idea, but strategy needs to be a little more specific, okay, than that. Not too specific, really, because it has to be adaptive in this day and age, because things are always changing so fast. So we have to be agile. We have to be quick on our feet, which I guess is what agile means, right? So we have to be agile in that sense. So I repeat myself, but I digress as well. And Sandy Degg says, hello, shared. Hi, Sandy. Welcome to you. And people greet each other. And Steve Day says, my state senator Zooms at the bottom of this hour. Okay.
Oh, cool. Who's your state senator?
And Sandy greets Kay. And in what state are you located? Okay, so strategy. The federal strategy to actually get the national version, Medicare for all, okay, of single payer, appears certainly to be blocked at the moment. That doesn't mean it will be blocked next year or the year after that or the year after that. But the way things are shaping up, there's a good chance that may happen because, because, of course, since the Democrats have not been moving fast enough to get rid of voter suppression and gerrymandering in the states. Meanwhile, the state legislatures have been moving very, very fast to create a structure of voter suppression, and gerrymandering and even overturning of elections. We have a situation where the Democrats could be locked out of office for a very long time.
You know that big plane that I was in? Honey, I'm on live. Sorry, Joe.
That's okay.
Keep going. I don't want to cut you off.
So, since that is the case, since we seem to be blocked in developing a successful strategy, at the national level, and that may be the case for a very long time, we have to look for other fronts to fight on. And it's not simply a matter of passing single payer on some of these other fronts, but it's also a matter of designing a movement and designing a program that uses success on the other fronts to build up the movement and make it stronger nationally, and to weaken the hold which the opponents of the movement will have or are expected to have over both state offices and federal offices. So the idea is that this movement is not just a movement for single payer in the states or for single payer, at the national level, but it's a movement which we envision as creating a cross-level dynamic and a cross-state dynamic as well, but a cross-level dynamic from local governments up to state governments, up to federal governments, with feedbacks going up and going down. And these feedbacks creating a complex web of influence, not straightforwardly visualized or straightforwardly created, but created through networks of people growing and influencing other people continuously on a day-to-day basis, so that the communications of such a network challenge the lobbyist communications that are so successful in creating control of the Congress and control of federal offices and control of state offices by the corporations and by the rich. We know what we're fighting, and the only way to counter it is with dense networks of people and communications and direct actions of various kinds. We know this. What we're here tonight to talk about is how these efforts might take place and the general lines of a strategy for causing them to take place. So, Lisa, now I will give you a chance to comment and to fill in the blanks which I have left in this extremely abstract concept of dynamics. And the floor is yours.
No pressure then, Joe. I mean, you've really covered the whole spectrum of that, right? So, okay.
No pressure.
So, what? Yeah, none. So, I'm a healthcare activist first. For those of you who know me, you know that I've worked in the healthcare industry for a dozen years before I exited. I watched what wasn't a great healthcare structure in the first place, but definitely better than it is now, become a reactive, non-preventative healthcare system that's been privatized from the standpoint of the ACA, although it covered more people, so you have coverage. You have less take-home income. Oftentimes you can't afford to go to the doctor. I would love to actually get my hands on what those percentages look like, because over the years you've gone from seeing your deductibles potentially being $2,500. Now it's very frequent that you see deductibles of $500, $600, $700, $7,500 for an individual. For your family, it could be $1,200, right? And I did hospice. I'm very concerned about my fellow man, my fellow humans. It's just where I come from. I did not grow up in an affluent situation by far. And we struggled when I was younger. So, you know, I've always taken note of what it was like for those individuals that I ran into to just try and scrape together a living. I think it's part of the reason why I got out of auditing and banking and took a year to try and figure out what my mission was, what was I going to do for other people, in service for other people in the private sector. Okay. And at that point, I went into healthcare, and I was in healthcare for a couple of years before the ACA was passed. And from that point on, I just watched it. I watched it deteriorate. Okay. So in that space that we all hold, where I would think that upwards of 50% of us think twice before they're ever going to call an ambulance, let alone get into the ER and have to figure out what your treatment options are, whether or not you land in an ER that is in your network, whether you find that out while you stand there or not. I've seen all of this happen, right? And so when it comes to what needs to happen, which is to get the private insurance sector the hell out of healthcare delivery, I think that most people do not understand what has happened, even in the last 3 or 4 years, to exacerbate the privatization of Medicare funding, the vertical integration or monopolies that have been created around healthcare delivery. The insurance industries have, if not partnership, ownership, or major endowment influence over even your medical schools in some cases. In some cases, they literally own the entire mechanism. So they've got their puppy mill that's going to spit out new doctors. They've got the hospitals that they're going to do internships in. They have the contracts that these doctors are going to sign that literally hand over their billing rights to the insurance company that owns all of that, including the ability to underwrite the insurance plans that then they're going to market to your employers. Whether or not you think you have great insurance, some people do. There are very, very few people that have quote unquote great insurance. They're wealthy, or they've been grandfathered into something that the next time around when they've got to negotiate their labor contracts, they're going to find out the hard way what it's going to look like for their new insurance, what it's going to cost them, what it's really going to cost them, and the fact that they probably will not get a wage increase. If they do get a wage increase, they're going to have to take a lesser insurance plan. I've seen it happen. I'm watching it on a regular basis. It's everybody, folks. Everybody. And CMS, which is the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, is infiltrated with the insurance industry. There's an insurance industry adjudicator for Medicare that is literally owned, I believe it's by Centene. I might be off base there, but I'm pretty sure it's Centene. They're the ones that are responsible for paying your claims. They're providers that are their employees. They own the hospitals. They own all of that. They're the ones submitting bills to get paid. And they are denying care to patients. Why? Because it behooves them to keep the money that's all theirs. They own the whole shooting match. So if every single one of these pieces in the healthcare delivery process are owned by the insurance industry or have controlling interest in these pieces of the puzzle. An MCO, I've got one here, they own it all outright. I've got an ACO next door. They don't own it all. They've got controlling interest in most of this stuff.
The MCO stands for?
Managed Health Organization.
Is it managed health or managed care organization?
Oh, sorry, care. Managed Care Organization. You got me. And an ACO.
Yes.
An ACO is what they call an accountable care organization. So it's not managed, right? So the management, the corporation, is not in control. It's accountable though, so that's the controlling interest piece. They call those providers that are in their network per se, partnership. They literally put out of business all the private providers, or they force them into oftentimes what was a hostile takeover. So all of that's going on. The insurance industry is lobbying the government to put out what is comes from the Federal Registry, which is the annual rule changes, law changes around how Medicare and the Social Security Act is going to spend its money that it funds to healthcare. And it's even more complicated than that. All of your doctors are well, not all of them, but most of them are certified Medicare providers. They need to be in order to adhere to the requirements of an underwritten insurance plan. That was the deal, right? So you have to have doctors who can provide care, sign, nothing happens in healthcare without a physician's signature. But now those physicians are under contract with these insurance entities. Okay. This is how this is all, it's a mess, you guys. And most people don't understand the rot that has ensued in all of this. Back when Bernie first wrote his Medicare for All bill, it wasn't this entangled. It was cleaner than it is now. Some people may have heard about the direct contract entities that are now coming into play, which are going to enable networks to take a doctor who signs into this direct contracting entity to convert all of his patients over from straight Medicare into a Medicare plan, like a Medicare Advantage plan, but not a Medicare Advantage plan, because the agreement is at the doctor provider level, not with each individual beneficiary. And they're going to do this without having a informed consent as the kicker, right? As the agreement that enrolls Medicare and Medicaid recipients into the plan. These direct contract entities are going to auto enroll people, and then they're going to get a letter. And if they read it, And if they read it, it's, the fine print, they may realize that they've been enrolled and they can opt out, but this has already happened. So with all of that said, there's been a lot of back and forth, a lot of pushback around state-based efforts as a path towards a national single payer, be it Medicare for all, under the name of the act that we're going to try and get passed. But the reality, folks, is that as long as Joseph Biden is in office, at the incremental potential changes that may come along. I mean, we can't even get a damn $3.5 trillion expenditure over 10 years to give the society that desperately needs relief in ways that would advance a family's ability to pay for childcare, to pull families out of poverty in a more permanent way. And everything else that's in there. I mean, there's so many things in there. Joe's not going to sign a Medicare for all bill if it gets passed in the House and the Senate, regardless of whether or not we abolish the filibuster. Let's just pretend for a second that somehow we can get that moved. Joseph Biden has always been someone who is not going to turn his back on the Republicans, even though he's a Democrat. He truly believes in bipartisanship. He opened up his campaign with a union busting attorney fundraiser. Okay. That is the reality. Where we are.
He did this while claiming to be a union man. Lunch pail Joe.
Yeah. I mean, he's from Pennsylvania. I have had the luxury of following that politician from Pennsylvania for 45 years, and I'm not kidding.
Well, 45 years ago, he was no longer in Pennsylvania. He was in Delaware by then. I think he was born in Pennsylvania and spent his first, 3 or 4 years in Pennsylvania. But then the family had to move to Delaware for economic reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so mostly he grew up, in Delaware. But he likes to think of himself as a Pennsylvanian anyway.
Yeah. So, all of that. The truth of the matter is that there's a lot of talking points out there that vilify state-based efforts. There's also some, there's 3 separate state-based initiatives in Pennsylvania alone that I'm aware of. Not all state-based legislation is created equal, whether it be out of just something written that, the people that are writing it aren't tied in well enough to those who've been at this for a while, are more familiar with what you can do, what the cutting edge ideas are, how to fund it, all of that kind of thing. You also have states where 18% of their GDP is a healthcare industry giant. Okay.
So which states are those?
Well, I always go to California with Kaiser. Kaiser Permanente was, born, bred, and grew enormously out in California.
California, yes.
And there are, and you've told me this, Joe, and there, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who have, patroned, utilized Kaiser, who will tell you, I get good care there. I will also go back to the premise that I always go back to because I've seen too much. If you're relatively healthy, independent, you can, you don't have a terminal illness that is, potentially going to have you running back and forth and incurring treatments and needing procedures because you are deteriorating. You don't know what that's going to look like for you from a standpoint of how good or wonderful or great your health insurance plan is until you're in that situation. Okay. And a lot of people who are older find themselves on a more fixed income, right? That's just how life goes. And what's great this year may not be great next year.
Yes, that's right.
So we have to have more than our eggs in one basket, in one bill that we already know, or two bills, depending on, Bernie's supposed to introduce his bill, but if this damn reconciliation situation goes on for 6 months, which Joseph Biden said on Friday it could, what are the chances of him breaking away and digging into his healthcare legislation? I mean, let's be honest. His whole team is killing it right now, trying to get this thing put together. And every time they have to go back to negotiations, they've got to go back to rewrites. And they've got to run it through all of the, what's this going to do if we do this? And what's this going to do if we do that? Making policy is a big deal. It's a big time consumer on the parts of those who are involved. And Bernie's running. He's the chair of the budget committee, right? He's also got that headache on his shoulders. He's got the budget situation that he's got to deal with. He's running this reconciliation negotiation, which was supposed to be finished, right? They already cut the damn thing by $2.5 trillion over 10 years. That was supposed to be it.
Yeah, they cut that deal. That cut that deal back at the beginning of the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3.5T seemed to be settled. And then, of course, the conservatives begin to renegotiate.
Yes.
And they've been renegotiating ever since they supposedly accepted the deal. Okay.
Yes.
Now, for some reason, Bernie is not pushing back the other way by renegotiating on his side. In other words, renegotiating it up, not going to meet them, but pulling the other way, which I think is what is needed and what he should have done. The minute he saw them slipping out of the agreement, he should have said, okay, they're breaking the agreement. I'm going back to $6 trillion. We are only going to vote for a $6 trillion bill. We're not going to vote for anything smaller. If the people want to come to the table again, if they want to hold to the original deal we made, we will do that. But if they don't, it's going back to $6 trillion. We're starting from the beginning again. How do you like those apples? That's what he needed to say to Pelosi, to Schumer, and to Biden.
And he needed to do it before Joseph Biden called them in and told them that they were going to negotiate downward.
Yes, but he needs to do it now. He needs to say, well, our president seems to think we need to go downward, but we've got the votes to tank everything, and we're going to tank it. Unless they go back to the original agreement, we're going to tank it. And not only that, we're going back to $6 trillion.
Hey, I'm with you. You know how I feel about this.
Do you want to back to $6 trillion or not? Okay, but that's a national, well, it's really a tactical discussion right now of what should be done at the national level with respect to the reconciliation bill. But that doesn't speak to the fight on all fronts strategy.
Oh, it does. It does. Let me tie this back up again. Let me just tie this back up again.
Please, please.
We, as American people living in America, how about that? People living in America, people trying to live their lives here. We're in a world of hurt right now. We've got a climate crisis that I don't think anybody who is salient doesn't realize is like now. We have to do something about that now. We have extreme poverty. We're in the middle of a pandemic. They've managed this so poorly. We're the worst of the worst of the worst. I mean, look around all the other countries. We're the worst. That impacts all of us. When it comes to healthcare, And I'm very passionate on all these issues, Joe, but I just happen to stay with healthcare because it would impact the most people, lift the most people out of poverty, save the most people's lives, increase the quality of the standard of living for everybody, right? We cannot allow ourselves to only keep pushing for this bill that Nancy's buried in the House, that there is no bill in the Senate, right? And yes, it's great that we've woken up that conversation about we need Medicare for all. This is number one, but it's not number one. They're not even talking about it. We just talked about all the things that are on the Hill that everybody's involved in up to their ears, and Joe
Right.
Biden is very
Right. What's in the reconciliation bill right now is expansion, okay, of traditional Medicare to dental, hearing, okay, and vision. And everybody is saying that the dental portion is not going to kick in until 2000, okay, and 28.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
It's
what
ridiculous.
kinds of stupid politicians say we're going to give you something that you're not going to have until 2000, okay, and 28, and expect you to get excited and come back and vote for them because they're getting you a benefit that you're not going to have until 2028, when a fairly sizable percentage of you are going to be dead.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
let's face it, it's
True.
not a benefit, it's bullshit.
It is bullshit, right? And it's bullshit. Anybody thinking that we are eminently going to somehow pass on a national level Medicare for all. That's the reality. We all agree on that? Then what do we do to keep not only the conversation alive, because if it falls off of the lips of the commentators, of the representatives on Capitol Hill, of the conversations that you're having with your friends, your activists are going to always try and keep this in the forefront. But there are so many things that we need, right? We have to understand that we don't have that time to wait, because we just talked about how they are raiding the trust fund and the Medicare for all. What do you call it, Joe? It's not a bank. What is it? What do you call that? You are always
The
telling
trust
me.
fund is just an accounting record.
It's an accounting record,
It's an
right?
accounting record. It's not funds in a bank.
Exactly. Okay, so the accounting record, and there's an appropriation to keep that funded, correct?
There's an appropriation to keep that funded each year, but the current law states that when the accounting record goes down to zero, that they won't be able to keep it going without further action by Congress. Which means what, folks? Right. It just means changing the law.
Right.
It simply means changing the law that regardless what the trust fund says, they're going to appropriate the funds to pay for Medicare or pay for Medicare for all. How's that going to happen? It'll only happen if the people hold them responsible and saying, this is bullshit. We don't care about your goddamn accounting record. Give us our Medicare funds. We know you can do it just by appropriating them. That's all that does it. We know about that. And we're not accepting any excuses. Appropriate the money for Medicare for all, whatever the goddamn trust fund says. We don't care what it says.
We're talking about getting them to pass something for the people, right? Again, it always comes to that, and they won't do that, or they have a big freaking problem doing it, right? And we're sitting here desperate again. In the meantime, CMS is going to get further and further under the control of the health insurance industry. And we're going to sit here and scream and yell that we need to get Medicare for all passed, which we still have to do that. But we have to threaten them on other fronts. state-based legislation, single payer legislation. Specifically, I fall back on whole Washington because that's actually the gold standard here. That legislation has been lumped into what they say about all state-based legislation, that it's going to raise people's taxes. And, you start talking about raising people's taxes, and it doesn't matter if it's going to save you as a family $15,000 a year if you don't get sick. Okay. People panic about, or a lot of people panic about, oh, don't raise my taxes. That's the buzzwords that they've hoodwinked us on forever. The state-based plans, but the plan specifically in whole Washington creates a surplus. It is never going to succumb to a recession, a downturn, or even a deep depression, because the surplus that bill will create is so substantive that it will withstand all of these attacks about how, the state can't handle it because the state is a user of currency. You know what? Just knock it off. The state can handle it because the savings that is going to be realized from getting the insurance industry out of healthcare is enormous. It's enormous. They will save 12 plus billion in the first year of implementation.
That's conflating two different things. That is to say,
there will be a surplus in the fund itself.
When you look at the financials for Washington, including the savings from the single payer program, including the portion of the state single payer program that will actually be funded by the federal government due to the application of current federal programs to the states, you have roughly $20.487 billion left over for the state to cover in the first year, of operation. As of the projection for 2021. Okay. Now, the state has a plan for raising the funds to cover that gap of $20.5 billion, roughly. And the plan to cover that gap will produce, will not only cover that gap, but will produce an additional surplus of $12.227 billion in the first year. And, okay, so there's a $20.5 billion gap, and there's a surplus above that gap of 12.227. So the surplus in the first year alone, produces 60% of what has to be covered by the state for that year. In other words, it covers the gap an additional 60%. So obviously, for the second year, there's enough money banked by the whole Washington Health Trust that nothing can happen to the program in the single year, in the second year, because it's already backed up by roughly 60% of the cost.
Right. So this idea that it's not solvent and the states won't be able to afford it, no, that's not true.
That's certainly not true. That is certainly not true for Washington, but it has to be emphasized because someone is going to say, well, Washington's a rich state. It's not like other states. It's special. Okay, it's separate. Most of the funding being produced by Washington that's producing that particular surplus is coming from employer payroll taxes of 8.5%, and employee payroll taxes of 2.0%. Now, I just have to say, all the states in the union have jobs and workers, and they have employers that can afford 8.5% payroll taxes and workers who can afford the 2.0% of payroll taxes. So all of them can cover the state gap that is likely to occur. All of them. Now, they may not implement single payer programs because they're damn red states full of people who are already being run by one-party systems that don't give a damn about them. That's a separate question. That's a political question. I'm just talking about the financial capability of the states. And I am saying that with this kind of financial plan that is being projected for Washington, every state could afford a single payer program. Every damn state. And the key thing to remember here, I'm sorry, Lisa, but the key thing to remember here is that it isn't about the tax burden on people. It's about the overall financial burden on people. And a plan like the Washington plan will lower the overall financial burden on people. So in other words, when the opponents of state single payer start talking about increasing tax burden, you immediately want to reframe it and say, it's not about the immediate tax burden on people. It's about the immediate financial relief that the people are going to get from such a program, and the immediate financial relief which the businesses are going to get from such a program. It's about relieving the financial burden.
It is. And this is the trap that we fall into, I think, as integratable people who are on the left. We immediately go into a defensive mode instead of leading with, it will save families and businesses money. Okay? In every state that has a viable plan that isn't trying to create a tiered, regressive healthcare system, right? Because I've seen, heard of, been communicated to without looking at the legislation of plans that actually were trying to do that. Okay, they were trying to leave the insurance industry in the game. The Washington Health Trust, the whole Washington plan is the same thing that we have visualized from the get-go. You pull the insurance industry out of healthcare, period. Yeah. The end. Okay. It will save families a ton of money. It will cover everyone who wants it. Okay. It will save businesses a ton of money. And we can get into the debits and the credits on this, but I'm telling you, we can have that conversation. If people want information on that, we can figure out how to put something together. But when you are a business paying $250,000 annually for your health care, right? And then your people are paying $500, $600, $700, $800 a month for their health care. And the whole Washington plan can take that expense of their premiums down to $200 a month and alleviate all of the other stuff. No deductibles, no co-pays, no out-of-pocket max, none of that. None of that exists anymore. None of that surprise billing because you accidentally went to a doctor that wasn't covered by your plan, but works in the hospital that's supposed to be covered by your plan, which happens a lot. None of those expenses exist anymore. None of them. You're going to get better coverage, much better coverage.
All right. And let's talk about that premium of $200 a month for a minute.
In the Washington plan.
In the Washington plan. There's something very funny about that premium of $200 a month in the Washington plan. And what is very funny about it is that it accounts for an extremely small percentage of the total financing to be supplied by the states for that particular plan.
In other words, if they eliminated it, they'd still have a surplus.
If they eliminated it, not only would they still have a surplus, they would still have an enormous surplus.
Mm-hmm.
If I recall the figure correctly, that accounted for 2.7% of the premiums of the affected revenue.
Correct.
The people proposing the Washington plan are also proposing that after a short number of years, perhaps 2 or 3 years, the premium could be completely eliminated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
The other point about this premium is that it wouldn't have to be paid by people who are less than 200%, of the poverty line.
Over the poverty line. Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
The people who are under 200% of the poverty line would not have to pay the premium. Only the people who are above 200%, would have to pay the premium.
Correct. So here's where we're going. Here's where this is going. Anyone who communicates out how it's a regressive tax that you're going to put onto the people, if you are taxing earnings at 2.5%, you're only able to tax as much as someone is making. Okay. It is going to better the take-home pay and eliminate a huge potential expense associated with those individuals and those households. And it's going to enable those people who would be averse potentially to going to the hospital to get treatment. It's going to enable them to go. And they're not going to have to go into a network. They can go to whichever doctor they choose to go to, because you are no longer going to have this network stuff going on. You're no longer going to have this precluding of individuals because, you happen to be out of network because this surgeon who's working in the hospital this week, he's not credentialed and under this plan that you are carrying. All that stuff
goes away.
And it enables your plan of care as a patient to be handed back to your doctor and you. No more denial of treatment because, the insurance plan wants you to try this first before we're going to go to this. And the doctor's going, oh my God, I've got to enter into another battle, filing an appeal or fighting a denial, which is what's going on. Instead of your doctors taking care of people, they're doing this kind of stuff. It's insane. It's the fall of Rome inside the hospital. It's why people, by the time they're even able to hopefully get any treatment, are so far down the path of illness because we are not doing preventative care. We're not even doing, let's screen you for, whatever it is, colon cancer, and let's make it as easy as possible for you to get on that schedule and get in there and know that you're covered for that. People don't do preventative care anymore because they're terrified of whether or not they're going to come home and get a $1,300 bill 2 months later.
So Lisa, you just stated something highly quotable that we ought to tweet all over the internet. It is the fall of Rome in the hospitals.
Yeah.
That is a beautiful image. The fall of Rome in the hospitals. We need to tweet that all over the place. Okay,
Yeah, we could make a reference to Nero fiddling too.
and we could, couldn't we?
Yeah, well,
So,
Rome burned. Absolutely.
so thus far, we've been talking about the design of the plans. In other words, what they should look like from the economic point of view and from the funding point of view. And we've also been talking about the strategy of argumentation for the plan going on the offense with respect to the single payer programs in the states. But let's for a moment consider, okay, let's say the bill or the initiative gets through Washington and we have the single payer program. It's running, okay, in Washington. It's running just as it's supposed to run. It's obviously a great success. Now we're talking about fighting on all fronts. So, how do we multiply the leverage we've got from that to strengthen the cross-state movement and to strengthen the cross-level movement?
Well, I think that part of that, Joe, is we have to get people to understand why it is so important to come at this from both pressuring for that bill, that the national bill, Medicare for All, and in the meantime, threatening the insurance industry by taking them out of the game one state at a time. Okay. Because we don't have enough pressure. We don't have enough influence on Capitol Hill right now. They're not taking that up. It's not there. It's not on the DNC platform. Okay. So if people don't understand the value of converting a state, once we get one state, we're going to get another one. And I am a fervent believer in paradigm shifts. 3 states with sustainability, equitable sustainability, and what was the other thing? I don't know. There's another one in there. But
It's equity, sustainability, and yeah, I got to look at that.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. People need to understand that taking the insurance industry out of the game is what these state-based plans will do. Okay? If you are at all under the understanding of how the ripple effect would be felt in the insurance industry, in the insurance lobby, in the medical community, and across the state, once people realize, wait a minute, you mean they got health care in Washington state and it's better than what it's been?
Yes, and you mean they threw the insurance companies out of Washington state, that they're out of business, okay, in Washington state?
Yes.
Now this is spreading to another state. By the way, each time you kick them out of a state, they lose a piece of their business. They get weaker. They get weaker in Congress. They get weaker in Congress. Also, in states that are neighboring to Washington, pressure gets put on the senators from those states. Those states. Yes.
We've got to start putting some major cracks in this dam.
Okay. And by the way, it's fine to talk about paradigm shifts. I certainly believe in paradigm shifts, but just as God only helps those who helps themselves, paradigm shifts only help those who make the paradigm shifts. And by the way, we're the ones we've been waiting for. We're the ones who have been making the paradigm shift and who have to go on making the paradigm shifts. So as things become more successful in Washington, and as Washington has already had some success. In other words, the creation of its plan and the creation of the economic analysis of that plan and the design of that plan and the argumentation for that plan, those are successes. Those are successes that are ready to be spread to other states right now. And the Red Berets, as an organization, can begin to spread that news to other states right now, because the Red Berets have a national focus and are a national organization. There are Red Berets in every state.
Yes, there are.
So it's
Yes,
going to be up to the Red Berets to spread that news to the other states and to get this going, okay, in the other states. And the Red Berets to nationally spread the news, also strengthening the national movement for Medicare for All. So we've been getting a lot of static from people who are saying, no, what you're doing at the state level is going to create a distraction and it's going to detract from the Medicare for All efforts. No.
No, it's the exact opposite. And if people hopefully can take this video and take away from it that there is no reason not to support state-based efforts, none, except if the effort itself, if the legislation itself, you know, there's, like I said, there's some legislation out there that's not good. But I will tell you this, whole Washington, that I would call the gold standard right now. They've thought of this. This is the, you know, they've gone through many iterations of this bill. The Red Berets are going to do a deep dive into New York, because guess what, folks? New York's got the votes in the state house and the state senate. They've got them. They also now have a variable in the governor. And that governor is going to have to rerun. They're going to have another gubernatorial election. I believe it's next year. So here's the thing. We're not going to get behind any legislation in a state that is not viable. And when I say that, I mean, and we have an audience here. Most of the audience has followed you, Joe. I'm new to the gang, but I think we're all on the same page. You're not going to put, I don't want to get behind something that I haven't, you know, ripped apart and done the due diligence on. Is this thing going to be viable? Is it truly creating the type of plan that's going to oust the insurance industry and shake them to their core and shake all those lobbyists to their core and give the Democrats the heads up that if you want to get reelected, I'm living over here in Oregon. Washington now has free, you know, healthcare. They've got a healthcare act. And they're the ones screaming that healthcare is a human right. We prove to them that this can be done and that it betters everyone's lives and they're able to live as a dignified human because we care enough to keep them healthy. They've got nowhere to go. There is absolutely a path to Medicare for all. The quicker we get one of these states with a solid plan to go, the quicker we are going to send shockwaves to Washington. Right through the lobby.
Right. And also the key here is this. In many states, you have these Medicare for all activists interested in single payer at the state level. And in many states, they have either been introducing bills or formulating bills. And what the National Red Berets movement has to do is to go into each of these states and see what bills there are now. See what we can learn from those bills that are on the floor now or that are getting to the floor now, and also see what they can learn from the Washington initiative and the Washington plan. And
we've got to get these legislators, people who wrote the legislation together and facilitate helping these other states who might not have the best plan together for whatever reason. Doesn't matter. It doesn't
Right.
matter. If
So
we've got
we're talking about transferring plans. We're talking about synthesizing plans because other states are going to have some good ideas too. Of
right,
course, the
right,
states,
and
laboratories, we can use the laboratories, we can use the knowledge, we can synthesize the knowledge and bring it to all the states and bring it to the national level too.
standardization of execution, standardization of implementation, standardization of knowledge, standardization of socializing the constituents, the voters, the people who live in the states. That's a ground game. The Red Berets know how to do all of this. We've got friends that know how to help bring the heat. We've got allies who healthcare might not be their signature issue because they got bigger fish to fry that are keeping their communities in, the situations that they're in. But they sure as hell want healthcare, but they need to eat too.
Yes,
Right?
some of our most important activists are in New York State itself.
Exactly.
And that's why that's a wonderful area for Red Berets to move into as
Yes.
well,
And
because we've already got foothold in that state.
we do, but we need to get in there in a real way. And we are. We've already started that initiative. I'm going to keep that on the DL until we get some, we like to report progress, not, let's just leave it at that. However, that's what we're going to do. And so, fighting on all fronts.
Fighting on all fronts. And by the way, we got to do something, in Minnesota too, because
Yes, and
they
Pennsylvania.
and
Yeah.
Pennsylvania, right? Minnesota, Pennsylvania, Oregon, California.
Hawaii's got one.
Yep,
Maine has one. Okay,
yep,
then we got to find out. And you know what? There are probably others that just haven't bubbled up to the surface. We got to go looking for them. We'll
yes,
find them. We'll find them. I'm telling you right now, the representation, they're going to know. Oh yeah, we have this here. My other groups of activists, other groups of individuals who have state-based coalitions, they're going to know what other states, right? They've heard this, they've heard that. People are going to. I would hope that if somebody wanted to start something in their state, they'd knock on our door. How do we do this? We want to be facilitating this so that the insurance industry does not get even further with both feet into the privatization of Medicare and Medicaid. Okay, that we can do something to get CMS. More people need to understand how bad it is on the inside of the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. People don't know this side of it yet. They don't understand it, but they will, because we're going to keep screaming it. We have to understand how quickly the tables will be turned when we get one state to go and another one's ready to go next, and the next one's ready to go next, and there's 3 behind them that are working on it, and they'll probably be ready to go in 2 years or the year after that. At that point in time, when we're working our butts off, the people in Congress, they're going to be like, okay, the tide's turned. You have to all remember, they don't even take polls anymore. Everybody's reporting that 70% of Americans want universal health care. Universal single payer healthcare system, right? Be it Medicare for all or whatever it is. Everybody wants it. Well, why the hell are they getting away with not doing it? You know
yeah.
why?
And not only that, in the Democratic Party, 88% of Democratic primary voters are for Medicare for all. Until now, the senators and congresspeople from that party are daring to vote against that 88% of primary voters.
Yeah.
Once the state-based movements start really going, that is not going to be possible for them. The
No.
pressure is going to descend on those senators if their states do not have Medicare for all. And in many of those states, they'll be blocked from getting state-based single payer because the state legislatures are controlled by the red Republicans. But the gerrymandering and the voter suppression doesn't help them at the senatorial level. So the pressure could descend on those senators of people saying, we want national Medicare for all, and we want it now.
Now, we know it works.
We know it works because it worked in all the states. And look at this. And we know the best thing is national Medicare for all. And the people in these states want national Medicare for all too. But the people in the other states that don't have it stand to gain even more from
Well, yeah,
national
they stand
Medicare
up
for
and
all.
scream too. We give them something to scream about. They've got it. Why don't we? And let's be really clear here, folks. Everybody uses this figure that 68,000 people each year die because they're underinsured or uninsured. Listen, that's pre-COVID, number one. Number two, there are 400,000 people who die every year from poor outcomes from a hospital admission because the care has deteriorated so badly. Nobody but the people in public health knew that information because we've got Dr. Joe Jarvis on our side, who was a public health physician and ran for lieutenant governor. He brought that to light, right? So now what you got? You got 400,000 people a year that die because of poor hospitalization outcomes, 68,000 of them that died from being uninsured or underinsured that we know of.
Actually, 68,000.
All of these numbers, okay, that we're quoting right now, they're the same damn numbers we were quoting in 2019.
Before COVID.
Yes. Yes.
So
do you know
how many people died from these causes during COVID? And they still wouldn't give us Medicare for all during COVID. They preferred that we die in, now they're telling us it's 700,000. We know it's not 700,000. The Institute for Health Evaluation Metrics in Washington, from the University of Washington, tells us we're way over 1 million right now. That we're way over 1 million. How do they get to that figure? Because they look at a comparison between fatalities this year and fatalities of last year, and everybody knows the only factor that was different is COVID. So everybody knows the cause is COVID, and they know that gap is more than 1 million lives.
Well, and it's not.
So these people, to defend the health insurance industry, to defend their profits, they preferred to kill 1 million Americans rather than have a Medicare for all program for everybody. That's the level of the crime that has been committed against us. That's what we're fighting against. We're fighting against inhuman monsters.
Yes, mass murderers. Mass murderers.
Moral monsters. Moral monsters. Okay, it's got to stop, folks. We've had it. It's got to stop.
It has to. Let's take a step back because I want to talk about public health because I don't necessarily think that this is brought up enough, and it is crucial. Public health has to function on a level that has your healthcare system standardized. Now, what I mean by that is you cannot have little fief. Right now, we've got fiefdoms within healthcare insurance monopolies because the monopolies exist in regions. Okay, you have insurance regions. You have healthcare monopolies that are growing like a ground vine across certain regions, and some of them are even going national in their networks, but definitely in their underwriting. Now it's all one and the same thing. Your insurance plans are the same thing as the doctors that are treating you. They're all under the same umbrella, okay? But they're disparate. Your healthcare records are proprietary in the sense that the insurance entity holds your records. It's why Monday through Friday from 9 to 4 is the only time that you can transfer records from one hospital system to another, because they're not hooked up, okay, on purpose, because they want to keep their patients separate from their competitors' patients, right? Part of the reason why we have things like not enough hospital beds. The number of hospital beds has shrunk dramatically over the last 6 years. Why? Well, because it's cheaper not to have empty hospital beds. But you've got to have empty hospital beds when you have things like a pandemic. It doesn't have to be a pandemic. It could just be an outbreak of, something that's happening just in a state. But the state gets overwhelmed. Why? Because it costs us too much money to have, 15 extra beds on floor 3 in the hospital. What the hell am I paying for that space for?
Right. And what is that all about? It's about the pursuit of profit in the healthcare industry. It's about profits over people. We need to stop the profits over people. It has to be people over profits. And by the way, there's a very important reason to know why that has to be the case. And that is because the government is charged with protecting the health of Americans, with protecting the general welfare. And this government is a monetary sovereign. It should be supporting the whole healthcare sector with whatever amount of money it takes to save lives and keep people safe. That is a legitimate function of the government, and we have to impress upon them that they have got to shape up and start doing that for the people of the United States. That we are entitled to it, and I'll tell you, entitlement is not a bad word. An entitlement is a right, and we have to start demanding and securing our rights. And one of our most important entitlements is health and health care. And health care is a right. And we have to start telling people it's a right. And if you don't give us our rights, we're going to take them.
Yeah. I mean, that's
whatever it takes. And you can use your imagination about what it's going to take.
So getting back to tying this back to public health, you cannot have public health without the public trust. If we would have had an appropriately funded, appropriately recognized and nurtured governmental public health infrastructure, we would never have landed here. Because it used to be, and Joe, I know you know this, when I was younger, growing up, if the Surgeon General came out and made a statement about something, you know what? People trusted them. The things that were said, people followed, they were concerned, people discussed, and they listened, and people believed in the idea that the public health infrastructure had their best interests at heart and intentions to be, to take care of society. We don't have that now. We got the goddamn insurance companies fucking running everything. And if you don't think that's true, let me tell you something else. Energy and insurance companies running healthcare, they're like this. You know why? Because the contaminations of the fossil fuel industry, which is energy, Joseph Manchin, they're part of the reason why they have regionalized this healthcare into places with these little monopolies, because without that, if you had standardization and aggregation, we would know who's getting sick and what the causes are and why. And people don't understand this, but I'm telling you, that is what's going on. So here's an idea. Let's blow up the health insurance lobby, because guess what goes with it? A major part of the fossil fuel lobby. Huge.
So that would be wonderful to do, But we also have to talk about the pharmaceutical lobby. News broke today, okay, that
Wait a
Merck.
minute, Joe. Before you do this, just understand that the pharmaceutical lobbies often own the insurance lobby, or vice versa. The industries own one another. They're like this. Okay,
Yes,
go.
they are. Okay, so Merck has released a new antiviral drug that's supposed to cut down the fatalities due to COVID, the hospitalizations due to COVID by 50%. So, a really effective drug, which was developed with funds from the federal government. Guess what the markup on that drug is going to be for us to get it, people? An article
3,000%.
appeared today, 4,000%
I
markup
was
on
off by
that
a
Merck
thousand.
drug. 4,000% markup. A
Well,
drug
I think you
paid
probably will
for
flip.
by federal funds. If Biden lets that stand, he deserves to be impeached forthwith. Forthwith.
He will. Why is he gonna? Why won't he?
Um,
I mean, I hate to say
I'm
it, but
sorry,
he's
why
not
won't he what?
talking very much. He listen. Here's the thing. We don't have any control on the Hill. The lobbyists have the Hill. All we have is what's out here. I would hope that by this time, people are comfortable with the understanding that the state-based efforts do not detract from a national effort. They are its legs. We are those state-based efforts' legs. And that does not mean that we are in opposition in any way, shape, or form. And anybody that tells you that we should be on opposition,
Is
they don't
seriously
get it.
mistaken.
They
Either
don't get it.
seriously mistaken or plain out lying.
They
One of the
don't
two.
have it.
One of the two.
They're not your friends.
Should we
They're
go
not
over
your friends.
George's article?
Well, wait a second now. Can we just bring this all back together here before you go to the
Course.
article?
Of course. Bring it all back together.
Fighting on all fronts, people. All of us. That means that the unions are our friends, the ones that are striking, that you can go out and support their strikes and bring to them the message of healthcare and what we're doing, and the multi-pronged approach, which is also to go at it from state-based efforts. If you've got questions about how to talk about that, please reach out to us. We can help, but it's fight on all fronts, right?
Yes, fighting on all fronts also includes on October 30th, there's an action in San Francisco, okay, the Day of the Dead action. Okay, the point of this action is to point up how many people died from COVID without Congress passing a Medicare for All bill. There's going to be a march on that day in San Francisco to Nancy Pelosi's house. And the vigil is going to be in front of Nancy Pelosi's house. People are coming in from all over the country to do this. This is one example of fighting on all fronts. The Red Berets are fully in back of this as well. They're fully in back of an action on November 19th in Vancouver, Washington, as well. They're fully in back of efforts taking place in New York State, but right now, to get single payer there. So.
And we will also back candidates that hold our positions. And we will also build coalitions with the activists who are concerned about the climate. We work with the Poor People's Campaign. This is the people coming together and understanding that we need all of us. The sooner we get all of us on the same page, or roughly on the same page, at least not fighting against one another, for God's sake, we're going to get this done. Because everybody, and I do mean everybody, even the idiots up on the Hill, are starting to realize that they're not going to get away with this anymore. They're not. So yes, there is the 19th action. There's the Day of the Dead. There's the Vancouver protest out in front of, why can't I remember her name? The head of the committee that needs to bring forth the bill. They want to hear it.
Oh, you mean it's Ann Cleveland, right?
Senator Cleveland, yes. They're going to go and protest at her house to get the whole Washington bill, put pressure on her, let her
Yeah,
know.
to get it out of committee. She won't let it out of committee. You put it on the floor.
She won't even hold hearings for the committees, right?
And by the way, she is completely under the control of the health insurance industry.
Yes.
Completely a beneficiary of more and more contributions. Thoroughly corrupted by the big money. It's so obvious. She won't put it on the floor because the donors bought her off. Does a person like that deserve to be a senator in the state Senate of Washington? No.
They all are, though. They're all there.
She's not representing the people. She needs to be thrown out. So
that's fighting on all fronts. And I've said this before in the past, and Laura said it before in the past, and we said it on some of the shows that we've been on before. If we can help you in your state, in your area, if you've got questions that, legitimate questions, hey, how would I do this? How would I find out if there's a state-based legislative effort in my state? Let us know. I tell you, we're going to help you because you're going to help us. We need to help one another. That is fighting on all fronts.
And that is another word for solidarity.
Yes, it is.
That's what solidarity really means.
Yes, it is.
Okay, with that, it is about 10:27, so I don't think we're going to go over George's piece here. I'm just going to leave a
Why
link.
not? It's a 5-minute read, Joe.
Okay, it's a 4-minute read, so it's entitled Through the States. And it was put up on Medium 8 hours ago by Georgia Davenport, who's the founder of Whole Washington. And she starts off with the title, The Canadian Strategy. Well, the title of the whole article is Through the States. And this first section is called The Canadian Strategy for Passing the Universal Health Care. The article, quote, the Medicare for None, response to the state-based the Universal Health Care Act of 2021, unquote. That article was done on Common Dreams, May 29th, 2021. Misses the bill's point. The article claims that Congressman Ro Khanna's bill will cause the balkanization of Medicare. But in reality, the bill will provide the framework for saving tens of thousands of lives, preventing countless, I've got to excuse myself here. I should be sharing the screen so you can see the article as I go through it. So let me do that. Here we go. It will put us off to the side. We'll still be in the picture, right? We are still in the picture.
Yep, we're good.
Right, so we're good. In reality, the bill will provide the framework for saving tens of thousands of lives, preventing countless bankruptcies, and providing relief for the working class from the predatory for-profit insurance system. And there's a graphic, from the Red Berets, actually a photo, which has been used, a number of times. It's the Medicare for All rally outside of the office of Representative Derek Kilmer, of Washington. Yes, but Derek Kilmer, who refused to co-sponsor Medicare for All. And look at all those people out in front of his office. It's a sight to behold, indeed. So, going further, the approach of sitting around waiting for the federal government to do something on Medicare for All is a failure. No matter how progressive an administration we manage to elect through our excessively undemocratic election process, our system of our system, which is our system of minority rule, will likely stymie any kind of transformational legislation. There will always be representatives like Senators Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema to block it for whatever reason. Thousands of health insurance lobbyists are waiting to extinguish any bills that threaten profits. Our government is essentially a fiefdom of big money interests, and what they want is what we get, and they will never allow such a thing as an improved system of Medicare for all. Someday, we may get another progressive administration, okay, another FDR with the moral and political courage to lead. But this could be decades away. And this is time struggling families don't have. For the foreseeable future, the Democratic Party as a whole is too worried about being labeled as, quote, socialists, unquote, to even think about passing an improved version of Medicare for all. This leaves it to the states. If the states are laboratories of democracies, then let them press forward. Gay marriage started in Vermont with civil unions. It moved across the country and is now enshrined in our national law. And now look at cannabis. States like Washington and Colorado finally had enough of using taxpayer money to build more prisons because of the racist drug laws the feds use as another form of Jim Crow. Now legalization is spreading across the nation. Someday the federal government will inevitably follow suit. Several states are now trying to break the chokehold of private insurance on our health care. Yet, these efforts have also been constricted by complex federal laws. This is what the, quote, state-based Universal Health Care Act of 2021, unquote, is all about. Ro Khanna's bill, quote, provide states with historic access to federal funding streams and regulatory flexibility necessary to implement and support affordable universal healthcare plans, unquote. So that's a quote actually from the bill, or a summary of the bill. States will be able to stop the privatization of Medicare via Ro Khanna's bill by providing 100% coverage, including prescriptions, vision, and dental benefits. Oh, and by the way, those dental benefits won't have to wait until 2028 to kick in.
Right.
The states will kick them in immediately. In this way, states can end insurance companies' nefarious schemes via supplemental plans to profit off the limitations of present-day Medicare, like, for example, the direct by contracting entities, like, for example, the Medicare Advantage providers. Finally, by expanding Medicare's coverage to be more like state Medicaid plans, which are far superior than federal Medicaid, states will help fight against the newest neoliberal narrative that, quote, the Medicare isn't great, so we shouldn't have Medicare for all. I don't know about that being the newest of neoliberal narratives. I've been hearing it since 2009. Contrary to the arguments by some in the single-payer movement, Ro Khanna's bill won't have a negative impact on benefits. In fact, the state-based Universal Health Care Act requires benefits provided under state plans to be equal or greater than what federal beneficiaries in those states receive now. So the legislation, if and when passed, will ensure that the state-based plans are better than what they're getting from federal plans now. They will be an improvement. Going on with the piece, whole Washington, for example, is one state effort to ensure everyone in Washington has gold standard health care and a much reduced cost to the working class families. The whole Washington Health Trust is modeled after the National Medicare for All bill. No deductibles, covering vision and dental. and with funding mechanisms that would assist in balancing the regressive tax system in Washington. In fact, Washington state has the most regressive tax system in the United States, allowing 14 billionaires like Jeff Bezos to pay zero income tax, while the 99% suffer under ever rising property and sales taxes. Unfortunately, the Democratic chairs of the Washington State Healthcare Committees, the Representatives Eileen Cody and Senator Annette Cleveland, have never let a real universal health care bill out of committee. Not coincidentally, they take tens of thousands of dollars in campaign donations from health insurance and pharmaceutical companies. Instead, they took the usual politically safe passage out of the issue that makes it appear like they are doing something, studies and commissions. This is why whole Washington has been preparing a ballot measure to take the issue to the people. If you live in Washington, be sure to pledge to sign the petition. And if you can, join their organization by volunteering. Just as Canada passed their single-payer system province by province, so we can pass universal health care starting with one state. This opinion piece was co-written by Walter Carpenter and Jed Nye of Whole Washington. To be very clear about this, in the final sentence she says, can we pass universal health care starting with one state? But she did not say it would be state by state by state by state until all 50 states are covered. She said the process would be started with a single state. And yes, it would move to other states too, but it would be part of a fighting on all fronts effort that would jump constantly from the state level to increasing influence on the national level and to strengthening the push for Medicare for all at the national level. What happens to the state bills when they get to the national level and actually pass a national Medicare for all program? If the movement handles it right, the national Medicare for all program will be as good as the best of the state bills, and even somewhat better. And moreover, the national Medicare for all program will just supersede all the state level programs at that particular point. So in the end, we won't have a state-based system. We'll have a system with uniform standards for everybody across the whole United States. Real equality in healthcare completely across the United States. So I hope you like that piece. I think it's really an excellent piece.
It's a great piece. It is so critically important that people understand how close Washington State is to making this thing go. They had to suspend their signature gathering campaign. They are doing everything that they need to do right now to socialize that they are going to bring this back when the signature gathering can be done and we're not in this awful outbreak, because unfortunately the only way that they can gather those signatures is they have to sign the ballot initiative signature pages, and they've got to be in person, and it has to be a hand signature. The state will not allow them to gather anything electronically or even by mail, right? But they can take that ballot initiative to the people and let the people decide. And it only needs to be, well, there's two ways that they can do it, but the last go round where they needed 400,000 signatures to get it on the ballot, it just needed a simple majority in the votes that were passed, or the votes that were cast, to pass it. They're really savvy. They've thought of all angles. This is not their first pass at legislation. They've been working on this for a long time. Joe had Cindy Jacobs on here, and they went through that legislation. They had Gerald Friedman review that legislation, not once, but twice, because there were 2 iterations to things. It's real, it's solid. And we have been doing a campaign, Facebook and Twitter, and talking about it when we were trying to gather signatures. We're going to shore up our alliances. We are building coalitions together with all the people that we can reach, so that when that legislation comes back, whether it comes back and they get it through committee, or it comes back and they've got to go to a ballot initiative, everybody needs to join in on that. And it's really easy to find Red Berets. You just go to Red Berets M4A, and up will come Laura's account, and she is the master at communication out here. She's been doing it for years. She's a lot of fun. She's genuine. She's from the heart. You know, help us out. You can volunteer with Whole Washington. You, no matter where you are in the country, you can volunteer so that you know what's going on. Your efforts to do some outreach into what they're, into the state can be done electronically. They have great people heading up their volunteers. Get involved, please. Please get involved. And don't let anybody tell you that these things are a bad idea. They're wrong. They're dead wrong.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Joe, for letting me get so upset.
That's okay. That was a great final statement. I think we'll turn to the comments now. Let's start with Jeff Denton at 928. Biden believes in bipartisanship for the ruling and political class, but if Americans suddenly wake up and started coming together, the National Guard would be called out again. And that's true. But if conditions are bad enough at that time, someday the National Guard will turn, because the National Guard is made up of the people, and they will turn.
Don't you think it depends on who's in the streets too, Joe? I mean, it used to be that once it gets to the point where people who used to never fear for their economic stability, and there's a lot of them now, we get in the streets, they're not going to have any choice, because nobody's going to vote for them, or they're going to vote against them. But they do not have the comfort level that they've had for a very long time. It doesn't exist.
And Carmen says, all one can do is not to get sick. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic, of course. People can't help it. I think the message of no sugar, no salt, and basic health and biology needs to be pushed hard in schools. Because if you do too much sugar, you get diabetes. If you do too much salt, you get high blood pressure, which ends up in kidney failure, and there's little recovery from that. And Jeffrey Denton says, no matter what or how much Bernie does, it is never enough for the trolls. See what I mean? It's never enough. Hey, Jeff, I criticized Bernie some here tonight. Okay, I think you know that Bernie is one of my very favorite politicians. But it's not a matter of comparing Bernie to all the other politicians and saying that he's better than all the other politicians. What this is a matter of is whether what Bernie does is meeting the challenge of the time or not. It may not matter how much he does and how much he has done if he doesn't done enough to meet the challenges of this time. I am saying we needed him to tank the American Rescue Plan if they don't have the $15, if they didn't have the $15 an hour wage bill in it. And he did not do that. And I'm sorry, Jeffrey, that was a mistake. That was a mistake. We need these people to stand up and insist that the right thing be done when it gets into bills, that the right thing be voted for, and that poisonous trolls like Manchin and Cinema and some of the others don't get to run what's in these bills. Bernie has to insist on justice by tanking bills that are inadequate and that don't meet the moment. Lana says sugar is a huge enemy. Too many carbs in general, fake food, chemicals in the water, too much sinning, too much stress, etc. Recipe for disaster. Absolutely. Carmen says, for instance, I never knew I was diabetic. Now I have started getting kidney issues. My lifesaver vitamin C is now greatly reduced. I'm just trying to get across, quote, try not to get sick, unquote. Carmen, I couldn't agree more. That's what we do here. I'm slightly diabetic also. I don't have serious kidney issues, okay, or anything like that. But I try very hard to stay healthy. I use a lot of supplements to help. I'm very careful about our diets here. I do the cooking. I know exactly what gets into the things we use. I'm very, very careful about it. Kay says, single payer would improve quality of care too. Carmen says, yes, Lana, precisely. I never knew how bad it was until I started breaking down. Lana says, give me a break, 2028. Carmen says, we'll be dead by 2028. Lana says, trust funds are glorified spreadsheets. They are. Ghostart says, over 2 feet of rain fell in Italy in only half a day. Something not seen in Europe before. That's amazing.
Yes, 2 feet of rain, 24 inches of rain in a 24-hour period.
Tried to stop the thing in Texas about the abortions.
Yeah.
He was blocked by the court.
Wait, who tried to stop it?
Joe Biden evidently tried to stop the bill, okay, in some way, and he was blocked by the courts. Specifically, what courts was he blocked by?
I don't know, and I lost the.
I see. Okay, well, we'll find out later what courts he was blocked by. Jeff Denton says, what are the Democrats supposed to do? Their hands are tied. Again, they hold a majority again. Yeah.
Their hands aren't tied. They're choosing not to do this.
Well,
people don't really believe that their hands are tied, do they? Come on.
Some of them are choosing not to do this. And the rest of them are choosing not to force the ones who are choosing not to do this. There are actions they could take. They could kick them off the committees. They could censure them. They could do various things. They could start investigations of Joe Manchin and his family in West Virginia. The family is thoroughly corrupt. They obviously use their positions to benefit, use their positions in government or related to government in order to benefit various members of the family. It is totally corrupt. It's time for Merrick Garland to start a whole profile investigation of the whole Manchin family.
Absolutely, they should. And I can think of another couple other families he needs to go after as well.
Right. Purple philosophy, high purple philosophy, you're new to this stream. Thank you for coming. Said, right, they always come back to how we're going to pay for it. Purple philosophy, so I guess the same way you pay for Israel's Iron Dome. We pay for things always in the same way.
Why do we even answer that question anymore?
I don't know, but the point is it's very simple. The way we pay for these things, he didn't ask the question. He said it's the same way we pay for the Iron Dome, and that's true. But that way specifically is congressional appropriations. If once Congress appropriates something, it's paid for. It's up to the Treasury and up to the Fed to fix the situation so that spending is done. So the funding is through the congressional appropriations. Congress has the power of the purse. It's in the Constitution. It's right there. And Kay says Dems are pretty much useless still. And Carmen says, see, Joe, our representatives won't yell and get mad enough to say, God damn you, austerity pimps to the corporate but neoliberal donors. But they should. They should. And they should strip them of their committee assignments and strip them of any authority they have in the party and start investigations of their donor-backed corruption right now. Purple Philosophy says the Dems and Republicans are too busy finger-pointing at each other to acknowledge the issue. It's true. Russ Gallman says the Republicans are fundamentally about chaos. Democrats are about, quote, nothing will fundamentally change, unquote, the Biden quote, that is. And Kay says Yang is talking about a new party. Yang, Andrew Yang, you heard it here in no uncertain terms, is a neoliberal son of a bitch. Do not take what he says at face value. He is totally full of it. He believes only in free enterprise crap. That's
you know what else
we're
is
doing.
worse? Let me give you something else. Andrew Yang is an FP&A guy.
What's that?
Financial analysis and projection.
Yes,
Right?
yes.
And planning.
Yes.
Planning. It's all hypothetical bullshit. It's all based off of stupid fucking models. It doesn't mean shit.
It's based on models that make false assumptions all over the place.
And any apologies to anyone that I might have just offended, but I used to work for someone very much like Andrew Yang. They are not grounded in reality.
And they're not to be counted on when you need something.
No.
That's the important thing. And any party that they start would be corrupted right from the very start by the ideology of Andrew Yang, which is not your friend. Karen Muna says, that's the spiel, Purple Philosophy. Ghost Dot says, general strikes are happening organically. Purple Philosophy leads the heart. Purple Philosophy says, I hope we have such a program during my daughter's lifetime. And Steve Gonzo says, at M for All is holding a vigil and rally to honor every person who has died in this country due to a lack of health care October 30th, and will march to Pelosi's house to demand a vote, okay, on Medicare for all. What they should also demand is that Nancy Pelosi resign, okay, immediately. Why should...
Can I interject there? Punch Up Pod, Lila and Pat, they are going to be there in San Francisco. So who else is coming? There's someone. Oh, Shahid Buttar, I believe, is coming.
Yes,
Fran,
he is coming. Okay, and Lila and Pat. In this case, Pat is Pat Cote, Pat the Burner, the better known. Okay.
Yep, they're coming.
And Lila, what is Lila's full name?
I don't know Lila's last name. I should. It's terrible. I don't remember it. But Punch Up Pod. They're the hosts of Punch Up Pod. They're going to be there. Fran, vote. Sylvia's daughter, vote no GMO. She's going to be there. I have not yet met Fran. I'm not going to be able to make it to San Francisco, which just is going to freaking kill me. I'm going to crawl into a hole. Joe, you're going to have to give me an assignment that week.
I'll be happy to give you an assignment that week.
Sharif's going to be out there. Scott Desnoyer is coming with his wife, Anna, and
but by the way, Anna is here tonight.
she's with us?
Yeah, she's with us. She's probably still with us now.
Hello.
She's probably still with us now.
I think Emma might be coming as well because they're her guardians. So maybe not, but I hope so. Yeah, that is going to be an incredible demonstration. Absolutely. And most of those individuals from the Red Berets are then going to be up in Vancouver, Washington for Annette Cleveland's protest as well, demanding a hearing. So if you're on the West Coast and you're looking for something to do and you've got the means, hit us up, man. We'd love to have you. Either San Francisco or Vancouver.
Okay, folks. So Kay says, I was almost better off with no courage. Purple Philosophy says, anyone right now that's not fighting for Medicare for all is complicit in murder. Purple Philosophy says, I can't wait for politicians to start wearing their red berets. I can't
Yeah.
wait for politicians.
We're gonna
Some media
see a
people
couple.
are starting to wear their red berets too. Carmen Muniz says, true Purple Philosophy, hashtag austerity is murder. It is, and it sucks besides. And Kay Clark says, Kay Clark Ryan says, we had a charity in southeastern North Carolina who took care of Scott, from her husband who has died. They removed his teeth for free, although no dentures. Well, that's a problem, right? The Purple Philosophy says true, and Lana Dell says, where is Amber? We need a meme. The fall of Rome is in the hospitals. Nero is fiddling. Yes, we do
Mhm.
need that meme very badly. And Lana says, where, not whether. Yes. I figured it was where, Lana. Purple Philosophy says, Rome is falling, is about to be, Rome is burning. Purple Philosophy, sadly, if only we had someone to threaten them. You mean some candidate to threaten them? We can generate one. Someone can rise from the people. We just have to be willing to listen to whoever that is. Okay, and Anna Denoye says lots of pressure. Sandy Degg says as Congress fiddles, Medicare for all burns. And Steve Gonzo says Joe the Fiddler Biden, holy malarkey Batman, flew over the cuckoo's nest. Lana says, oh my God, Steve, I love it. OMG, I love it. Okay, says such a waste. Sandy Degg and Purple Philosophy says Gavin Newsom sat between two insurance lobbyists at a fine dining restaurant. I believe that was the French Laundry, wasn't it? And Sherry Weiss said we should also really call out the legislators who are taking health insurance money. Carmen says we got to follow the for-profit healthcare death panelists into the bathrooms. I noticed that. I think everybody noticed that. And Jeffrey says we have been holding sit-ins outside of our offices here in Washington State. And he says it would be nice if we could put it on billboards all over the country. You mean the fall of Rome is in the hospitals? Yes, that would be nice to put on billboards all over the country.
Billboards aren't as expensive as you think.
Steve Gonzo says you have to flush them 10 to 15 times. Lana says, that too, Carmen. To hell with cinema. Okay, and Anna Shumpus Denoye says, we are starting a New York chapter of the hashtag the Red Berets. Yes, indeed. Carmen Muniz says, yes, flush the evil turds. And Sherry Watt says, medical care should really be pushed as an issue in rural areas because they have lost service big time. Yes.
Yes, they have.
Yes. And by the way, what's the point? The new infrastructure bill, the funds are going to be turned over to the regular internet pushers so they can install inferior internet in the rural areas far from the European standards. That infrastructure bill is thoroughly corrupted already. It should not be passed. It should be tanked. It is not doing what people need in the rural areas. 50% of it is going to be looted by the major corporations.
I don't think they ought to vote for it.
I don't think they ought to vote for it either. I think they ought to tank
I
it.
think they should just kill it.
I think they should kill it too and let Biden become the president of the United States if he really wants to pass it. Instead of Joe Manchin's office boy. Purple Philosophy says one mansion plus one cinema equals whatever they want. And Purple Philosophy says one squad plus one Nancy Pelosi equals whatever Nancy wants. Sherry Wise says hashtag healthcare is a human right. Kay says we were in Starr County, Ohio. We in Starr County, Ohio have lost 2 smaller hospitals that used to help people. Carmen says, man, I'm so glad I was a jock when I was young, or I wouldn't be able to get up anymore with all the symptoms I fight every day. I wasn't behind the gym smoking. I was running up and down the basketball court inside of that gym. Purple Philosophy said, same. Sherry Wise says, Lisa knows what she is doing. Indeed, she does.
Thank you,
Okay,
Sherry.
and Benoye says, wait, Barney's got something. Biden condemns, oh, that's on September 2nd. This is
Yeah.
September 1st. Yeah, this is old news. Okay, it's all old news. It's gone. But Alana says, who are these actors for New York program? Okay, Lisa, to be followed up when you are ready.
Who are what now?
Who are the actors in back of the program being considered, Kay, in New York? Or being conceptualized, okay, in New York?
You mean who? Okay, actors in the sense of who wrote the legislation? Or are you talking about the boots on the ground from the Red Berets in New York? Where are we going? Well, I'll just answer both questions. A gentleman, let's see, Assembly Member Godfrey wrote the legislation in New York. I do have my hands on and I sent it to you, Joe. I hope you got it. I have my hands on the study that was done. We're going to do a deep dive into that. I just got my hands on that through Scott. Scott got it and sent it my way yesterday.
Yes, that was the Rand Corporation study.
Yes.
We are very aware that the Rand Corporation is full of neoliberal assumptions in everything they do, and we will be reading that report very, very critically, looking for those neoliberal assumptions to surface and to determine the conclusions of the evaluation they gave. On the surface, they came up with the ridiculous result that single payer in New York is going to save 3% by 2030. On the face of it, this is nutty. They've got to be making terrible assumptions in this particular report. Don't worry, Lisa and I will uncover what these assumptions are, and we will blast them to kingdom come. You can be sure of that.
Joe, we got to get our hands on the bills. We just got to get our hands on the bills and go through them.
Yeah, I think we got to do that too. Carmen says, by the way, everyone get yourselves an aloe vera plant, a healing gift from Mother Nature. Purple Flossie says, so is Biden. Carmen Yunus says, I found another aloe, all messed up at a curb alert. I took it home. Come to find out, it's a soap aloe. Actually, medicinal soap properties in the gel. And Purple Philosophy says, Biden said he would veto it if it came across his desk. He would. He did say that he would veto it. But I, for one, do not believe Biden for 1 minute. If that bill were to get through that to his desk, get through both houses to his desk, it would only be because an overwhelming number of people in the country are behind it. If we ever got that kind of movement going, Biden would not dare veto that bill. Biden is a political animal. He knows enough to go with the wind, and he is going to go with the wind on that if it gets to his desk. So don't believe him. Don't be discouraged. Get that movement going. Get that movement working. Get single payer in as many places as you can get single payer. Get it reinforcing a national movement. In the end, Biden will cave as he has caved on so much else.
He's a one-term president, is he not? Didn't he say he was only going to be a one-term president?
No, he has not said.
Yes, he did. He said that when he was running.
No, he didn't say it.
Yes, he did. I'm going to go find it.
Okay, go find it. Go find it. And then you can
I'll
plaster
tweet it
it.
at you. I will tweet it
we-
at you.
And then we can plaster it all over Twitter. Okay?
You don't believe
I
me, do you?
promise I will help you plaster it all over Twitter if you find it. How's
Okay.
that? Okay?
That's fine.
Okay. So, Purple Philosophy said because our representatives are corrupt. Lana said, Purple, if it actually got his desk, he wouldn't have the damn nerve. Oh, Lana said that at 10:12. She beat me by a good margin. Jeffrey Denton says accidents in hospitals cause 250,000 to 440,000 deaths. Also pre-COVID. Yes, I know
Yes.
that's true.
Yes. There's millions plus people who are dying every year right now because of our healthcare system.
And Purple Philosophy says, yeah, we can't even get it to his desk. Purple Philosophy says that's worse. Purple Philosophy says everyone that was for it pre-Biden doesn't even bring it up. Purple Philosophy says no $15 minimum wage, no Medicare for all, but bombs for Israel. Not only that, bombs for Israel, they don't even need that extra $1 billion. It was purely performative. Purely performative. They already had enough for the Iron Dome, more than enough for the damned Iron Dome. They had that. They just gave them an extra $1 billion so they could kowtow to the Israeli lobby in the United States. That's what it's about. Sherry Weiss says, we have all this money going to artificial intelligence, which is used for military and defense. Why not use it for medical care to improve public health in many ways? Well, one caution with respect to that. It would be great to use AI for appropriate purposes. But right now, Liz Fowler at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation inside of CMS is trying to use artificial intelligence to find a way to take care away from people in the Medicare and Medicaid program. That is, Liz Fowler is doing her thing. We got to remember, AI can be used for various and sundry purposes because no one has figured out yet to give the AIs a sense of ethics and values and public purpose.
You're talking about psychopaths who are developing this. You really think they're going to pull in ethics, Joe?
I'm not
You know
saying
what I'm saying? I'm just being honest.
I'm being honest too. No, I don't believe they're doing that. I'm saying we need to get people who will do that.
Yeah.
We need to get the kind of AI that will do that. We need to find ways to do that. Kay says, when my first hubby broke his leg playing rugby, I asked his doctor to take him home. To take him home, I could take care of him. So I could take care of him myself, as his care there was awful after privatization of that hospital. He signed him out to me, as well he should have done. Sherry Wise says profits shouldn't exist in healthcare. Atlanta says 4,000%? Seriously?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 4,000%. I just saw an expose today somewhere. It's in one of the things that I ate up today that I ingested in my constant effort to be completely up on all the news that's fit to print, because the New York Times isn't doing that anymore. So it's necessary for people like me to try to do that. Sherry Wise says standardization is an anathema to monopolies, as is simplification. Carmen says that's criminal by Merck. Jeff Denton says every single day I make sure to tell at least one person about the 1973 HMO Act when it suddenly became ethical, quote unquote, to profit from healthcare in the United States. And it seems like I am the very only person who does it. And since the signing of the 1973 HMO Act, the cost of healthcare in the United States has literally skyrocketed. Yes, it has. If you look at a graph, it's sort of up like the up and up and up, high linear slope. Carmen Muniz says, fuck work, I'll keep my masks, sanitizer, social distancing, and maybe some other antivirals too. And Kay says, yes, Jeffrey Denton, I remember that too. And Carmen says, Lisa is on fire. Yes. And Steve says, 40% of U.S. COVID-19 infections and 33% of virus deaths are associated with uninsurance before the pandemic and soared last year as layoffs threw millions off employer-provided coverage. And Karina says, what if Schmancy Nancy just moves before the march? She's got the heads up. I jest. It's the public demonstration that counts. You should jest, because Nancy Schmancy will never remove herself from that place, because it's on San Francisco Bay, and it's where she throws these huge parties to fundraise from. It's her fundraising center, her party center. She will never leave it. And Jeffrey Netton says, Senator Cleveland is chair of Washington State Legislature Health and Long-Term Care Committee. And Laura Fielding says, hello, I made it. Kay says, hi, Laura. Jeffrey says, I gave Georgia 10 claps on the Medium app. Thank you, Jeff. I'll go over there and give her 3 claps. How about that? And Steve Gonza says, see, so 330,000 uninsured but related deaths. Most probably, yes. Or if it says, thank you, Lisa and Scott, but Denoyer, I guess it's actually Denoyer, for being at the protest in Tacoma for Kenny Ballantyne's first visit. Your solidarity and your help meant a ton. Hashtag FOAF. Carmen Yuna says, will the Red Berets strike on 10/15? And
We're doing strike stuff. Laura will tell you about that. They're putting together craft strike. We're going to call it a craft strike. And they're knitting roses for the craft strike. And yeah, they've got plans.
okay, and Steve Gonzo is saying the unvaxxed, unemployed nurses will. Jeff Denton says there are currently only 3 states left that don't have some sort of legal cannabis laws. Only 3. Carmen Muniz says I've started taking acidophilus to help with my digestive issues. I hope it helps you, Carmen. Steve says Alabama's using COVID relief funds to build prisons. That should have been prohibited in the law. Absolutely prohibited. Jeff Denton says just pledging to volunteer gives us a database of people to go back to. Nora says that's damn well right. Carmen says go start. That must be because of terrible written COVID relief legislation. Shake my damn head. Yeah, it is. It's because of the legislation that was written under the Republicans and that had things like that in it, giving authority to the states they never should have had. Carmen says, terribly, yes. And Lana says, oops, I rolled it down too fast, which I sometimes do. Sorry about that.
We're going to put some heat on Ro Khanna to get his bill moving, too.
Yes, but I don't think he can get it moving. We need to put heat on Pelosi to get it moving.
Is it out of committees?
I don't think it's out of committee yet. I think she buried it in the committee. I don't know whether it's buried, okay, in Ways and Means, okay, or where, okay, it's buried, but part of the price which the progressives ought to demand
Is to get it as a rider.
to build back better bill
Yep. Yep.
is
It's
to
got to
get
be in there.
Ro Connor's bill in there. Absolutely. They
Yep.
should demand PROAC stuff be in there. They should demand $15 an hour be back in there too. They should demand the parliamentarian be fired. And they should demand that no parliamentarian replace her. The Senate doesn't need a parliamentarian. The senators can be their own parliamentarians. But it used to be that way at one time. It can be that way again. So Lana Dell says pre and probiotics are needed. Try to have some fermented food daily. Kefir, kimchi, I think you mean kimchi, raw sauerkraut as example. Kombucha, kombucha, which she spells kumbachka. She says I might not have the spelling quite right. That's right. There's no K at the end. It's kumbasha. And Lana says kimchi, not chew. Yeah, right. And Steve says, does whiskey count?
I don't think so, Steve.
And Laura says, yes, Lisa, yes, we are so close. And Scott, okay, and Anna Denoye, as we know, we're going to bring the Red Berets Medicare for All to the organizers of New York Health Act and all organizers who want to join us in hashtag FOAF. And Russ Goldman says, Joe, I need to wind up for the night. See you again next time. But good night, Russ. I'm very glad you were here tonight. It was a very good night to come. See you again soon. Carmen Muniz says, oh no, no fermented stuff, having kidney issues. Lana Dell says, no, Steve, booze turns right into sugar once it hits the bloodstream. It's a beeline to cancer. Try to keep it to a minimum. Laura Fielding says, get in touch with Red Berets Ops Director, Lisa Theobald, or myself.
No. I love it. I love it when somebody calls me an ops director. I've been trying to get that damn job for 30 years. Thank you, Laura.
And the Red Berets, Medicare for All.com. And Lana says, not a pile, Carmen, laugh out loud, just a bit every day or as much as can be tolerated. Kefir is high-end yogurt. Yes, it is. Jeff Tetton says the general strike is a nonpartisan issue. Yes, it is. Sandy Degg says, bye, Russell. Carmen Muniz says, Alana, phosphorus is bad news. Gostart says, white phosphorus is the worst. Carmen says, Bernie has been in politics too long to make such mistakes. Well, Bernie's getting on.
I don't think so. I think Bernie has a lot of kick left in him. He just knows when to kick.
Well, I would suggest he's made a few errors in that respect. But let us go on. No clue how much phosphorus is in yogurt. Carmen Reed says too long, correction. Jeff Denton says we have no idea how these people are being leveraged. It took Bernie 40 years not to be blacked out of the media. Nobody seems to give a crap about the hundreds of people that Bernie has gotten elected each year since he first ran 2016, because all it would take is one troll like Jimmy Dore claiming that Bernie didn't do something, and the entire political revolution grinds to an absolute halt. I understand that people only think about Washington, D.C., and think that all you have. Okay, Jeff, I do agree with that. Carmen Muniz says, you are my inspiration, Joe. My chef a la Hulk. Thank you, Carmen. And Kay says, I was borderline diabetic when I was pregnant, so I am dealing with it in my old age, too. Carmen says, that parliamentarian did some more damaging stuff. Can't recall the details at the moment. Yeah, She said that the immigration provision in the reconciliation bill had to be thrown out. And why she said it had to be thrown out, she said it was such an important issue that it superseded mere budgetary considerations. So she excluded it on those grounds, even though everybody knew it would have a budgetary impact. In other words, she decides to include in these bills what she thinks ought to be included in these bills, and she throws out every other thing on any arbitrary grounds that she can think of. She contended that the $15 an hour minimum wage would not have a budgetary impact after CBO had found it would have a budgetary impact. So basically, she ruled against what CBO had said. But of course, the main responsibility for this doesn't lie with the parliamentarian. It lies with one Joseph R. Barden, who said, I respect the parliamentarian, by which he seemed to mean that he wasn't going to ignore her advice. Those two things are not the same. You can respect the parliamentarian perfectly well, listen to what she says, think about it, take it seriously, and just not take her damn advice if they, it's somehow off. Sandy Deck says, I keep hearing a weird noise, so do I, like a clicking sound. I have no idea where that is coming from, Sandy. Lana says, yes, I reposted Yang's short video, still touting the UBI. The good part, he said, was ranked choice voting and open primaries. Yeah, he probably has some good parts. He always has some good parts, but as you know, UBI is not a good part, except, of course, during COVID. And the other parts are good parts. But really, you have to view what he's doing from the economic point of view, the point of view of his economics, which, frankly, when it comes to rigorous economics, is totally missing. He's way out to lunch when it comes to economics. He really doesn't know it. Thinks he does, but he really doesn't know it.
FPA.
Huh?
What?
I'm sorry, Lisa. What was that?
I said he's an FP&A guy.
Yeah. Carmuna says, thanks for having the courage to cuss, Lisa. We need more of that. Oh, you think I'm too clean here, Carmen, huh? And Lana says, that march at Pelosi's needs to be a live stream. Absolutely, it's going to be live streamed. You can be sure of that. Laura says, thank you so much to you both for this live stream. Even only catching the end has been awesome. Much love. Hashtag solidarity. Much love to you, Laura, also. And we hope you'll rewatch the part that you missed because I think it was pretty good. Lana says, hi, Anna. Sandy Degg says, it is a luxury to have teeth. Shake my head. And Carmen says, did the Red Beret movement take notes from Germany about how to pay for it? No. And Kay says, yes, it is Sandy Degg. And Carmen says, neoliberal pushes and pimps. I like it, Joe. Kay says, well, I'm getting tired and we'll have to be out of here soon. Thank you for another great discussion. I love you all. We love you too, Kay. Sandy Dake says, love you, Kay. Jeff Denton says, Biden may have been a political animal back when he was lucid. He's still a political animal now. He backs off of things when the pressure gets too high. And Carmen says, Lisa, what's that cool pin in your beret?
It says the People's March, and it says Medicare for All. And I'm just going to put this in front of you guys. Laura Fielding, like everything else that's extra super cool, made these white. There we go. It says the People's March, Medicare for All, and there's a red beret in the center of that medical symbol. And I have a t-shirt that says the same thing. It's really cool. And that was given to me by Laura when I first met her, when we went down to kick off Summer Hernandez second Senate run.
Right, in Texas, right? Her second Senate run.
Yep, we went down to Houston.
Yeah, Summer is really cool.
Yes, she is.
She's really great. I interviewed her a couple of times in 2018.
She's
I thought she was a real fighter.
she's incredible, and her political prowess is amazing. Like, she's a prodigy. She really is. She's unbelievable, and her ability to make contacts, and I mean, she's just brilliant. So yeah, Summer's incredible.
Yeah, she's going to get there. There's no question about it. And Dolores says Biden is going to be a one-term president. It's in his astrological chart. Thank you, Dolores.
Yay!
Sandy says, not really, laugh out loud. Good, laugh out loud. Purple Flossie says, no, they don't. Purple Flossie says, yep. Costart says, 77-year-old Biden told Politico it is unlikely he would run for re-election in 2024 when he would be in his 80s. If Biden is elected, an advisor to the campaign told the news outlet. So he said that to Politico. He said it was unlikely he would run for re-election. But he hasn't actually ruled it out. And right now, when he's asked questions like that, he refuses to rule it out. Steve says he's going to be 82 years old in 4 years, and he won't be running for re-election. He's going into this thinking, I want to find a running mate I can turn things over to after 4 years. But the problem is, the person he found is Kamala Harris, and Harris is rapidly developing the same kind of profile that Hillary Clinton has, specifically the profile of the mean girl. I'm afraid she's got that now, and I don't know if she's ever going to escape that, because actually I think that's who she is. And Purple Philosophy says, and also on another note, let's fire 70,000 medical workers in New York, but not in Congress or the Senate, for not getting the vaccine. I'm not sure what to say about that, but Purple Philosophy says Nancy's had 2 major old spills. Oh, that's probably oil spills in her area, and hasn't said anything about them yet either. I wonder why. Because she's invested in those oil spills. Carmen says, it's Nancy's soiree then, Joe. I don't know how to spell it. Yes, it's Soiree. And there's an accent, a coup, over the first E. That's how you spell it, Carmen, if I recall correctly. Carmen says, meaning Nancy's house on the bay. Purple Flossie says, sorry, I mean. Purple Flossie says, I meant oil spills. The parliamentarian is just another saboteur. Biden is a dolt. Lana says, I don't trust Yang at all. Steve says, funny how the TYT squad stands that had a big problem with Jimmy Dore's house jumped to defend Hassan's mansion and $500,000 plus income. Carmen Muniz says, how may we get 1 or 2 of those pins, t-shirts?
They're cool, right?
Yeah, they're cool. I think what you have to do is go to the whole Washington website and find the merch area in there.
Yeah, there might still be some buttons out there. I don't know.
It's wholewashington.org.
Yep.
You might be able to find some buttons over there. And I think that's it, folks. I think we have gotten to the end of the comments. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for the active participation tonight. And I want to thank Lisa especially for joining me tonight and doing such a wonderful job. This particular live stream was one for the ages, so far as I'm concerned. And I hope it gets very, very wide circulation so people could feel the fire. was my pleasure, Lisa.
And you guys, please, let's just like bring people together. We've got to bring people together.
Got to bring them together in this movement, because this is the movement that's going to win the day for Medicare for all. This is it. Oops. There are a few more things that have come in while we were saying goodbye. Carmen says Kamal also has that weird, cold, cackling, psychopathic laugh like HRC. Needs some, quote, psychos be gone spray, unquote. Sandy Deck says, thank you, Joe, Bonnie, and Lisa. Thank you, Sandy, for coming. And Steve says a lot of frontline med professionals say they contracted COVID multiple times, giving them more immunity than the jab would actually provide. Well, that might be true. And if so, they should certainly be exempted from having to take the jab. And Dolores says, thank you for a great discussion and show. Thank you, Dolores.
Thank you,
And Lana
Dolores.
says, good night. Carmen says, it was such a treat. Glad I made it. Hugs. Really glad you made it too, Carmen. I know it's very often very difficult for you. So thank you for coming.
Yep, absolutely.
That is absolutely true. So good night, all.
Good night,
We will
everybody.
see you again soon.
Good night.
Good night. Good night, Bonnie.
Good
Good
night.
night, Joe.
And good night, Lisa.
I'm
Thanks.
sure I'll bug you again tomorrow.
That's quite all right. I'm sure we'll be talking tomorrow about the RAND report.
Yes, we will. Okay. See you
Good
then.